Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Prosecution, rebuttal argument for the state?
This court, counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you're very looking forward to going back and deliberating, so I won't waste time thanking you again, other than you have our thanks. I do agree with Mr. Fleischman on one thing. The video is horrible. But the video is horrible because it does document this defendant murdering James Peoples. That's why that video is horrible. And when you are given all of the evidence that you are given, it is to show you how the buildup to that night occurred. The defendant, an hour before that shooting, said exactly what he wanted. It's war. Nothing but. The defendant wanted a war, and he chose that Chevron as his battlefield. This is not a case of self-defense, as we told you. It's a case of self-offense. And when Mr. Fleischman talks to you about the jury instruction on self-defense, it's important to go over it with you. I'll put it on the overhead. Because there's certain words that are very important for you. You are the finders of fact. You are the ones that tell us what happened on that night. You have the video, you have the witnesses, but you are the ones that tell us whether or not the state has proven the elements of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt, and whether or not we've disproven self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. The words that are important for you to understand in this case, because you've heard the argument of everyone. Delinord Dumercy, the defendant, is justified in using deadly force only if he reasonably believed that the deadly force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm. And when you're deciding whether or not the defendant was justified in the use of deadly force, you must consider the circumstances by which he was surrounded at the time the force or threat of force was used against him. And at the time the defendant used force, James Peoples was standing, stopped, after walking towards that gas station with his hands outstretched. So you have to decide if at that moment in time the defendant was justified, the defendant felt that deadly force was imminently going to happen, and if the shooting was necessary. Now, Mr. Fleischman talked to you first about the defendant not having a duty to retreat, and he is absolutely correct. The defendant does not have a duty to retreat under Florida law. So if James Peoples got into that store, and James Peoples began to actually use physical force on him, he began to hit him, strike him, punch him, pull a weapon, try to do something to him, this defendant absolutely would not have to...
I'm sorry, can we approach?
Yes. So again, under that situation, the defendant wouldn't have a duty to retreat. But in this case, what happens is the defendant...
I'm sorry. Can I approach?
And then they talk back and forth about whether or not he's coming with her to the doctor. That is not the conversation that someone who is just the victim of an attempted murder by the person in the pink's boyfriend would have. Mr. Dumercy was asked questions about one of the times that he threatened Miss McRae and... not Miss McRae, because he was very clear he never threatened Miss McRae. But he said he only was threatening the victim in the case, James Peoples. And we discussed the time where on December 4th, 2016, he texts her and says, I found where that person lives. There's going to be a lot of blood tonight. I'll never let you be in a relationship. And then he accidentally texted another person and said, I'm in the shorts tonight. I've got the strap so we can handle that. I'm trying to kill that fool tonight. Bring yours in case his homeboys get funny. And Mr. Dumercy, when he was up there in front of you, told you that that was somebody else must have picked up my phone and sent the text message. Well, full text message that he sends, trying to kill that fool tonight. Bring yours in case his homeboys get funny. You know how Yankees be. Right? So he refers to James Peoples and Miss McRae as Yankees. And on November 8th, 2016, this is during the portion where Ms. McRae says James is mad at you, and the defendant responds, "I'm ready now. Tell him to bring his chrome because I've been wanting this next time. Next time I see him, I'll put that bullet through his head. You don't know what you started, fuck-ass Yankee." So he didn't tell you the truth when he said somebody else sent a text message, because that's the way he talks, and that's how he refers to James Peoples. That's how he refers to Darnisha McRae. He's trying to justify the unjustifiable. He needs to be in reasonable... the state has to not disprove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that he was in reasonable fear of Mr. Peoples at the time that he used deadly force. So you as a jury need to determine whether or not his fear, if he did in fact have any, was one that was reasonable, one that you accept as a reasonable justification for the taking of another man's life. I would submit to you, a person that has been threatening another individual for a month, who has multiple times threatened to kill him, multiple times threatened to shoot him, is not in reasonable fear of that individual at the time that that man is walking up to the gas station. But let's also talk about Dumercy's explanation for what happened when he was in the gas station and how that placed him in additional fear, and how it doesn't really work with what we can see through the physical evidence. One of the things that Mr. Dumercy told you was he went into the store and he could see Darnisha McRae's car, the blue car, through the window, and he could see that that window was blocking off his bike, and that's how he knew that he was going to die, because his one avenue of escape was blocked. Except the problem is, first, there's no window. In fact, there's a big black sheet over the window, because on the other side of the window, again, out here, certain portions of it for you. At this point,